And welcome to Z Sports Dallas Primetime. I'm Mauricio Rodriguez. Hope you're having a great Tuesday. Hope you're having a great start to the week, of course. And, well, it is an important week for the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys opened this week, actually, with a big Cowboys practice open to the public. And really, you just get the idea of how desperate NFL fans are for football and Cowboys fans are for the actual Cowboys. The Star in Frisco was filled with fans in a public practice by the Dallas Cowboys. We'll get into some takeaways. Not a lot of takeaways from this practice because at the end of the day, it was just a practice. But still, some comments here and there and some things that we can take away from that Cowboys night. We're going to be talking about whether or not Dak Prescott is going to actually play versus the Houston Texans. And we were not really, we were not really sure about how to handle this conversation when I saw you all last Sunday night, but we had some interesting Mike McCarthy comments. We had some interesting Mike McCarthy comments on Dak Prescott. And, of course, the initial cuts, and you'll notice those cuts are in quotation marks because cutting players is not the only way you can lower that roster number. So we'll get into that as well. And, of course, Hard Knocks tonight at 9 p.m. Central Time. Once we finish primetime, you probably will be getting ready to watch HBO Hard Knocks, the second episode of the Dallas Cowboys in this historic NFL show. So thank you all for being here. Thank you, Joshua, for being in the chat. Morad gets some. What did I miss? Not much, Joshua. Don't worry. We have not actually started the show off officially. That will happen in just a few seconds. But first, let me ask you to share the show. If you're watching on Facebook, if you're watching on YouTube, or of course on Twitter at ADC Dallas, make sure you let your friends know by sharing, by retweeting, or whatever it is. Let your friends know that you're watching ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. And now that more of us are here, we can start the show off officially. Welcome to ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. I'm Mauricio Rodriguez, streaming with you live every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central Time. And of course, for more Cowboys content headed your way for the 2021 season, make sure you head over to adcsportsdallas.com, where you can catch up on the Dallas Cowboys, where you can catch up on the Dallas Mavericks, and maybe soon enough, maybe in a lot more places, you can catch ADC Sports Dallas content. So thank you, Jack, for checking in on the show. Aaron is also here. SMU fan videos. I'm not going to lie. SMU has become one of my favorite teams, by the way. And this is a random comment. Just one of my favorite random teams to follow. I'm a Clemson Tigers fan. I have been a Clemson Tigers fan since 2011 when Tatch Boyd was tearing up college football with Sammy Watkins and, of course, DeAndre Hopkins. And since then, I've been a fan of Clemson. But SMU, and I follow a lot of college football teams. I mean, like, Clemson is my favorite team, but I do not have that fandom as for other sports leagues like the NFL and, of course, Major League Baseball. I don't have that big fandom for any specific college football team, but maybe Clemson is getting there, and Clemson has gotten there in the past few years from a personal standpoint, of course. Thank you, Marco, for being here on the show as well. Bible Junkie, is Fehoko getting cut? And this is a more complicated question right now than it was a week ago, because Malik Turner is dealing with an injury. And I was leaning towards the Cowboys carrying 5 wide receivers. And actually in that episode that we did last week, in which I gave you guys my 53-man roster projection, we talked about the possibility of the Dallas Cowboys carrying only 5 wide receivers. And I do think that is possible, but the Malik Turner injury makes things all the more interesting. But because even if the Cowboys carry 6 wide receivers on the roster, what are the chances that 6th wide receiver is Malik Turner and not Simi Fehoko? So not entirely sure about that, but it's a possibility. It is possible for Simi Fehoko to actually be cut. Stevie Mack, thank you for being here. What's up, Ruben? Hit the like button and share the video. Please listen to Stevie Mack. Let your friends know that you're watching ADC Sports Dallas. Irving, who is watching from Colombia. So we are going international here on ADC Sports Dallas. Thank you, Irving, for being here. Where is Skywalker still? Asks Lord Nova. Right now, he's probably in Dallas getting some rest. I'm not entirely sure. However, all kidding aside, Sky is going to be doing the morning shows every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I'm going to be here every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday at night. Remember, you don't have to memorize these dates because starting in September, we are going to be here 5 days per week. Sky is going to be on Monday through Friday, and I'm going to be on Sunday through Thursday. So hope you enjoyed that as well. Sky does the morning shows. The Lunatic, Mauricio, mi hermano, go Cowboys. Thank you, the Lunatic, for being here. Thank you, Payo, for being here as well. And Jack for sharing the show on Twitter. Thank you to the chat for being so active right now. So the Dallas Cowboys had Cowboys Night. And before we get into, and shout out also, before we move on, to the people on Facebook who are watching on Facebook, thank you for joining ADC Sports Dallas. Is Jalen Smith dropping in the depth chart? He has not looked that good. And that is a very interesting question for me because I actually, this same week, I published an article. No, it was not this week. It was on Sunday. I published an article that was actually titled, Jalen Smith is dropping in the depth chart. So yeah, I think he is. Jalen, and we talked about this also on last episode, Jalen has not played that well. And that snap that we broke down in the last episode of ADC Sports Dallas Primetime, to me, summarizes things overall. Because we saw a linebacker that was playing slow and that was reacting slow. I have not dropped Jalen Smith all the way to linebacker 6 yet. I still have him as my linebacker 5. People are, or maybe even linebacker 4. People are putting him behind players like Luke Gifford, and I get their frustration, but I'm not there yet. Maybe Jalen Smith can still be a serviceable backup for the Dallas Cowboys. Love the show. Thank you, Chris, for the kind words, and of course Steve Collins as well. Thank you for your kind words, and thank you everyone for joining us right now. Do you think Noah Brown and CJ Goodwin are worth roster spots? Noah Brown is a little bit tougher for me. CJ Goodwin, I think he is. I think that we need to put more value as fans and as NFL media, for example, including us. But we need to put more worth on special teams, just like coaches need to do. And Cowboys fans know this better than anyone else. Because Cowboys fans know very well what it is like to have a terrible special teams unit, because that's what the Cowboys had under Jason Garrett. And I think that it's nice to have a full-time special teamer, because that is exactly what CJ Goodwin is. CJ Goodwin provides close to no value to the defense. And I think he himself would tell you that, because in an interview with the Athletic the other day, he actually mentioned something like that. He said, I'm a special teamer, and I bring very little to the defense when it comes to playing as a defensive player completely. He's more of a special teams guy, and I understand that, but I like that, and I think he's a roster lock right now. And the way John Fassel, the way Bones expresses himself of CJ Goodwin makes you think that he's a roster lock. The other day he said, I know what I've got on CJ Goodwin, so I'm taking the opportunity of watching other players. So we had Cowboys Night on Monday, and before we actually get into what happened and some of the takeaways from that practice, I wanted to take a small minute, just a minute, to remember Cowboys Night from 2020. Do you remember that wild experience that when the Cowboys walked out there on the field and had no numbers on their jerseys, and it was the ultimate panic coach move by Mike McCarthy to have the players without numbers. And we were all excited because we did not have any preseason games. So that was just a tiny bit of what we were going to be able to watch from the Cowboys before the regular season. And we were all very excited. And then the angles from the stream were all very weird, and they showed us close to nothing. I was just remembering that the last night, and I was laughing out loud because that was a very weird experience in 2020. But Cowboys Night was a little bit different in 2021. Of course, fans were in the building, so there were a lot more videos coming out of the practices. We saw players wearing actual numbers, so that was different as well, believe it or not. But some interesting notes from that practice, and here they are. First 11-on-11 activity for Amari Cooper. He said today in a Dallas Morning News report that he was doing a little bit, that he wanted to do more, that he was not doing the tougher things on the football field. He was not specific about that, but Amari Cooper is nice. It is nice to have number 19 back on that field, because we're finally going to be watching Cooper, Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, and of course the way that Kellen Moore is going to use them, which is everyone's going to play in the slot, in my opinion, and everyone is going to be lining up outside as well. So I'm not sure if we're going to be able to point towards one guy and say he is the slot wide receiver. I don't think that's the case for Dallas Cowboys. I think we're going to see a lot of rotation. When it is all said and done, I think that the wide receiver that's going to play the most in the slot is going to be Michael Gallup for a lot of reasons, but I think that it is mainly because of CeeDee Lamb stepping up his game. And again, he had a great Cowboys Night practice. And according to all the reports out there, CeeDee Lamb is still destroying and dominating the Cowboys defense in practice. And that's without Dak Prescott throwing the ball, by the way. So CeeDee Lamb is the real deal. And he's been having a very strong training camp. And I believe that the hype is real. And I believe it completely. He says over here, $9 million cap, he's going to be our fourth linebacker and getting paid good money for it, says the lunatic. But too much dead cap hit to cut or trade him. 2022 is another story, though. Yeah, I think Jalen is going to stay just because of his contract. And I saw somebody on Twitter, and that was Dave, who does a great job covering the Cowboys as well, Dave Sturcio. And he was talking about tell me Jalen Smith is making this roster without using the contract as an argument. And I get what he was trying to say, because he was trying to say that if it wasn't for his contract, then Jalen Smith would be gone. But at the end of the day, the contract is there. And I think that will be enough to keep Jalen on the Dallas Cowboys in 2021. I really do not see the Cowboys moving on from Smith this year. And some people have speculated about it. Some people have said, hey, maybe the Cowboys are so desperate with Jalen Smith that they want to just get rid of him. I don't think that's going to happen. Jalen Smith is going to be on this team in 2021. But in 2022, though, I'm very confident that unless things change dramatically, Jalen Smith won't be on the Cowboys in 2022. No numbers and no video. Lol, Cowboys Nation had a meltdown. It was a wild experience. This new kicker we're trying out from the CFL looks good, though, says Jack. And I don't want to, I saw those news, but I don't want to mess up the pronunciation. But yeah, there's a CFL kicker. I think he's just going to probably be a preseason body for the Dallas Cowboys. I'm not entirely sure if we should get our hopes up there. I think that Greg Sarlin is going to be the Cowboys kicker in 2021, but it does look good. I was watching some videos today on this CFL kicker that the Cowboys are going to try out. But I'm not entirely sure if he's going to have a big role on the Cowboys. However, good comment there by Jack. I was forgetting about that. If we don't see Levitron kick in preseason, are we worried for week 1, says the lunatic. I don't think we are. He's been kicking during the practices, at least according to some of the coaches. I know special teams are very important, says Jeff, but couldn't someone like Reggie Robinson be more valuable than CJ Goodwin on special teams and defense? Surprisingly, we sometimes think that these players can step up in the same way that some special teamers can. But surprisingly, I think the answer is no. I think that there are some players that are just made to be out there and step up during the special teams plays. So I think that that's the reason why Robinson is gone, by the way. And of course, we will get into Reggie Robinson in just a few minutes here. Thank you, Uncle Charles, for being here in the chat as well. At least this season, says Laquan, regarding Jalen Smith staying. Only way Jalen is gone this year is if it's a trade and Dallas is part of the contract. But Stephen will never do that unless they're desperate for a position. That's Stevie Mack in the chat, and I agree. I don't see the Cowboys moving on from Jalen Smith in 2021. But yeah, Amari Cooper was back. He was having some participation in 11 drills. He was limited, though. Another player who was back on pads but did not participate in the 11-on-11 portion of the practice was none other than DeMarcus Lawrence. And we know very little of DeMarcus Lawrence, unfortunately. We know very little of him because, of course, we know who D-Law is, but we have not seen him work a lot during this offseason as he's been dealing with an injury and, of course, had another surgery, stuff like that. But back in Pats for DeMarcus Lawrence. So good news for the Dallas Cowboys as we approach the regular season. Malik Hooker had his first padded practice back on the 11th, if I'm not mistaken. And on Monday, he saw his first participation in 11-on-11 drills. He had an interception. And, of course, this is when Malik Hooker's battle to not only make the 53-man roster, but maybe at some point fight Damontae Cassie for the starting role. Well, it starts now for Malik Hooker. So we were excited about that as well. And maybe my biggest takeaway from Cowboys Night came from Mike McCarthy's press conference, but it was regarding the Cowboys linebackers. And we talked about this on the show a few times, but Mike McCarthy kind of confirmed it. We already know, apparently, who the Cowboys starters at linebacker are. And those two would be Micah Parsons, the rookie, and Keanu Neal, the safety turned linebacker. Now, of course, I mean that they would be the starters technically, because on base defense, you would need another linebacker or maybe another two linebackers if the Cowboys are really going to play a base defense of 3-4 with a three-man front. However, Keanu Neal and Micah Parsons started on Friday versus the Cardinals. And Mike McCarthy said in the press conference that we saw these two because they are the top nickel linebackers. And since the Cardinals opened in 11 personnel, those are the linebackers that the Cowboys started versus the Cardinals. Now, forget about base defenses. Forget about playing a 3-4 or forget about playing a 4-3. The truth of the NFL, and right now, the reality in the NFL is that nickel defenses are your new base defense because teams are playing in 11 personnel most of the time, which means that NFL defenses are walking out there with nickel packages most of the time. So that means right now that the Cowboys starting linebackers are the rookie Micah Parsons and Keanu Neal. And of course, the biggest question here was beyond Micah Parsons, because we kind of expected Micah Parsons to take over the linebacker room. So many of us were expecting maybe Leighton Vander Esch to be starting opposite of Micah Parsons, but now we know it's Keanu Neal. And I think it is very interesting to see that because they're clearly your top two linebackers when it comes to coverage, pass coverage. And we were not sure that Micah Parsons was going to be ready in that department, and maybe he isn't yet, but he's shown better abilities than what we were expecting after watching the college tape. Because every draft scouting report that you picked up on Micah Parsons in the weaknesses section, you would see he has the potential to be a great player in pass coverage, but he's not there yet. So apparently he is there yet, and that's going to be your starting duo for the Dallas Cowboys. Great job, good job. I just subscribed. Thank you, Uncle Charles, for subscribing to the show, and thank you for your kind words as well. We will roll with our young and hungry players. Let's see what we got before looking elsewhere, says the Lunatic. And Neil worried me during OTAs, put Pats come on, and he's shining. But Pats come on, and he's shining bright with Micah. And of course, he forced a fumble during the Friday's game versus the Cardinals. And I think that Keanu Neal is an interesting player, right? Because he's sort of like an hybrid. Even though the Cowboys are calling him a linebacker, he still has this body build that also resembles a safety from time to time. So I think that the Cowboys are going to roll with these two and, of course, give some playing time to Leighton Vander Esch in short yardage situations. I think that if we're talking about 2nd and 3, 3rd and 1, or downs like that, maybe number 55 comes in and he plays instead of Keanu Neal. The White Wolf is the man, says Joel. Stevie Mack, the way Javril has been playing, I think he might be the number 3 linebacker at this point. Cox has had a strong training camp as well, and mainly against the Cardinals. I think that that's the game in which he made the biggest statement. Definitely pushing his name into the conversation, as the Lunatic is saying, against LVE. No way can 55 afford an injury this year, and that is the biggest deal. Now, I see some comments mentioning KJ Wright. Thank you, Last, for being here, by the way. But I think that the Cowboys are going to stay put at linebacker. I wouldn't expect a free agent signing at linebacker. I would expect some at both the offensive line and the defensive line, because I don't think that any of us are in love with the depth at any of these positions, specifically inside. We don't like what we have behind Connor Williams, behind Tyler Biadasz, behind these guys. We don't like that, but we don't like what we have, of course, at defensive tackle. Even more so now that the Cowboys do not have, well, Neville Gallimore. So, actually, regarding the linebackers, my question is, right now, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you in Neil Parsons as your nickel linebackers? Forget about the depth. Forget about Jalen Smith and Leighton Vander Esch. How do you feel on a scale of 1 to 10 about Keanu Neal and Michael Parsons starting as nickel linebackers? And I'm going to be a little bit conservative with my answer here. I'm sorry about this. I'm going to be a little bit conservative. Well, maybe not as whoa, we're getting all kind of answers here. Dallas Young says 9. Joel says 6. Laquan says 7.5 from Stevie Mack. So I actually thought that I would be seeing higher numbers, but I'm going to go with 7, just like Laquan did here. I'm going to go with a 7 for the confidence level in the linebacker starters, because I've been very impressed with Michael Parsons. He's a rookie though at the end of the day, so I'm ready for Micah's learning curve to be a problem at different points maybe of the season. However, Keanu Neal also makes me lower that number, because I like Keanu Neal, but he's not your balanced linebacker who can also bring support in the run game. I mean, he can do so, but maybe his biggest strength comes in coverage. 6 probably says Jeff. I don't know if Neal is an every down backer, which is kind of what I was trying to say, but actually Jeff nailed it, and he said it in a better way, more accurate way. Neal and Cox are your nickel backers. 11 turning into what he said he was, a ball magnet, says the Lunatic, and that is just amazing. And there was this interesting Michael Gelkin tweet out there during the Cowboys Night practice, in which he was saying that Michael Parsons at some points, he looks like a blur. He's that fast. And I'm very excited about Michael Parsons in that aspect. He really is an athletic freak, but there's going to be a learning curve there probably. And we were talking about the Hard Knocks scene in which Leighton Vander Esch tells Michael Parsons, like, you cannot make every play. And a lot of people took that the wrong way. A lot of people were thinking like, oh, well, that's mediocre or something like that. But it really isn't. That's how football works. That's how gap integrity works for defenses in the NFL. So it's going to be very interesting to watch that learning curve. But Michael Parsons, in terms of athleticism, he might be right out of the gate one of the best in the NFL. Vander Esch is a ball hawk, struggles a little bit in pass coverage, says Joel. There's definitely going to be some hiccups for sure, but by midseason, they'll be running full steam. Yeah, probably. I agree with that. And Steve Collins, watching it on Facebook, agrees with that as well. Below the Heaven says, who the hell is this guy? And I think he means me. So nice to meet you, my man. I'm Mauricio. I'm going to be here every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday night. Z Sports Dallas, have you seen the new blue Dallas SMU uniforms jerseys? I have not seen those. I'm looking forward to doing that. And probably right after the show ends, we're going to get into that. And before we move on to the roster cuts, I just wanted to say we were talking about the possibility of watching Dak Prescott play the Houston Texans next Saturday night. We were talking about that last episode on Sunday. And I was telling you that I was not very sure about it since the Cowboys have been this conservative handling his injury. I think that the Cowboys might lean towards waiting and just waiting it out and seeing Dak Prescott until the regular season. Well, Mike McCarthy had something to say about it during the press conferences, and he said that there was no urgency. So little by little, I feel like the Cowboys' tone of playing regarding Dak playing on Saturday is changing little by little. So right now, if you ask me, I'm leaning towards not expecting Dak Prescott to play versus the Texans. I think it's not going to happen, and I think we won't watch him until the regular season. Mike McCarthy did say, however, that if he didn't play versus the Texans, then don't expect him to play in the third week of the preseason, which is more or less what we were saying on Sunday here on ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. Of course, just based on hunch, not because we had any kind of information, but I see how the Cowboys are dealing this, and I don't expect Dak Prescott to play on Saturday versus the Houston Texans. That is my take, though. So, moving on and to the main topic of this show, the Dallas Cowboys roster is down to 86 players, and that is right, 86, not really 85, even though they are in compliance with the 85-player limit for their roster, and we'll get into those details in just a few seconds here. But the Dallas Cowboys have made their initial roster moves. They went from 90 players in the roster limit to 85, and here are the moves, and here are the cuts in quotation marks, as I was saying when the show began, because there are more ways than just cutting a player to lower that roster number. So here are the moves that the Cowboys made today in order to get to 85. They sent 2 players to injured reserve, and this is the good old stats, as they call it. Reggie Robinson is now on injured reserve, and the same is true for Sewo Olonilua, players who are dealing with injuries and players that the Cowboys decided, you know what, let's protect them by sending them to injured reserve. And now these 2 players are not eligible to return in 2021. So the Cowboys cannot activate them to the active roster at any point during the year. They are gone, and they will be competing in 2022 for a roster spot. But right now, they are not eligible to return since they did not spend a single day on the 53-man roster. So that's the difference between them and the players that are going to initially make the roster and then be sent to injured reserve. They are eligible to return. But for those that are being placed on IR right now, well, they will have to wait one entire year. Then linebacker Anthony Hines was waived/injured. This means that he has to clear waivers before the Cowboys can send him to their injured reserve. But if he is claimed by any other NFL team, then the Cowboys will not be able to keep him. But Anthony Hines, an athletic linebacker that had his moments in the preseason, but I don't think he was really fighting for a roster spot. Anthony Hines might be lacking a little bit of play strength before becoming an NFL-worthy linebacker. But he's pretty athletic. We'll give him that here on the show. Now, the 2 players that were outright released were Brandon Eagles, wide receiver, and Kyron Brown, a veteran who was signed by the Cowboys just mainly as a camp body, I believe. But Kyron Brown actually had a strong training camp with the Jets a couple of years ago. So maybe the Cowboys wanted to see if they saw something in Brown, and clearly they did not. So these were the 5 moves that the Cowboys made to get to the 85 roster limit. However, they have 86 players on their roster. And you probably already know why, but if you don't, I will tell you exactly why. Isaac Alarcon right now is a roster exemption because he's designated as an international player. So the Cowboys are allowed to keep him as an extra guy, and he does not count towards the roster limits or the practice squad limits as long as he is designated as an international player. So those were the initial moves from the Dallas Cowboys. Next Tuesday, they have to go from 85 to 80, and then until August the 31st, they will have to go from 80 to the final 53-man roster. And even then, you will see these injured reserve moves and some players being called up to the roster and things like that. So the roster is not going to be fully set until before the week 1 regular season kickoff versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm very excited, by the way, about that game because I get why the Bucs are favorites, and they should be the favorites. And I believe in the betting world right now there are 6 points and a half favorites over the Dallas Cowboys. And I fully understand why. And I think that when the time comes, I might pick Tampa Bay to win the football game. But I believe that watching Dak Prescott and the offense go at it versus Tom Brady and company is going to be very, very fun. I really wanted to see TJ Vasher play this preseason, says Jeff, a guy that had a lot of fans surrounding him, and we all wanted to see him, but we have not seen him as much. One of those players that might be gone, in my opinion, by next Tuesday, because next cuts are going to be next Tuesday, as we were saying, and I think that the Cowboys have a lot of young wide receivers prospects, and some of them are going to be cut next Tuesday, in my opinion. Just released Reggie Robinson, says Dallas Junk. I actually like Robinson a lot, and I'm somewhat disappointed that we're not going to get to see him again in 2021. And of course, I hated that the Cowboys transitioned him to safety last year. I did not like that. I was looking forward to watching him fight for a roster spot this season, and maybe Maurice Kennedy. I think that Reggie Robinson is one of the biggest losers out of Maurice Kennedy's strong training camp. He's one of the players that were the most impacted, in my opinion. Thanks for explaining the roster cuts, says Laquan. Well, that's why we're here. No need to thank me, but thanks for the kind words, Laquan. Can't wait for episode 2 of Hard Knocks tonight, says Dallas Junk. And yes, in about 30 minutes, episode 2 of... yeah. I was kind of confused there, Joshua. I was kind of confused there. Shut your mouth. He's going to surprise you next year. Hopefully. We're rooting for that. Definitely. But yeah, can't wait for episode 2 of Hard Knocks tonight. And I agree, it's going to be a fun show at 9 p.m. Central Time, just about 30 minutes. We're going to, some of the things that we're going to get to see on tonight's show. The main one is going to be the Rams practice. I'm more excited about the Rams practice than I am about anything else on tonight's episode of HBO Hard Knocks, because we are going to get to see the Aaron Donalds-Connor Williams fight, and we're going to get to see the Tony Pollard and Kenny Young scenario that we saw over there, that maybe it was not that big of a deal, but we're going to see all of this intensity from the Cowboys-Rams practice of last Saturday, like last Saturday. So that's going to be fun as well, and I hope you all enjoy it. And now that I mentioned Connor Williams, we forgot to talk about one of the Mike McCarthy comments on the press conference, in which he basically confirmed that the Cowboys starting offensive line had Connor Williams at left guard and Tyler Viatich at center. We already expected that. That was the projection. However, the Cowboys' experiment of putting Connor Williams at center, snapping the balls, it made us question, like, are the Cowboys going to surprise us here with a different set of starters? I even did a show about it, and I was questioning it. But Mike McCarthy confirmed that Connor Williams would be playing at left guard, and it would be Tyler Viatich at center. So there you go. Now we know who the Cowboys starting linebackers are and what the starting offensive line looks like for your 2021 Dallas Cowboys. Hope you enjoy tonight's episode. Hope you look forward to the Skywalker show tomorrow morning. That will be it for me tonight. But before I go check out adcsportsdallas.com. Remember, for your latest Dallas Cowboys coverage and Dallas Mavericks coverage as well. There's an interesting article from Shane Carter there, in which he put together some staff surprise edition predictions for the Dallas Cowboys. Go check out what mine was, what Skywalker's was, and of course, the other staff writers for adcsportsdallas.com. Also, an interesting article there from Adam Holt on DeMonte Cassie. I recommend you go read that one. And as Stevie Mack is saying, please hit the like button on your way out. And of course, share the show. And if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, let your friends know that you were watching adcsportsdallas.com, and let your friends know about ADC Sports, of course, especially before we know if bets can go on the practice squad. I don't see why we wouldn't be excited to be able to stack some players on IR while we learn who our rookies are as players, says Jamal, which is right on, in my opinion. Hit the nail right in the head. So thank you for joining me. Hope you have a great night. I will see you all on Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central Time. Hit the like button, subscribe, and of course, well, check out adcsportsdallas.com. Check me out also on Twitter at MauNFL. That's MAU NFL. And you can follow me there on Twitter. I put out some bilingual tweets, by the way. But if I tweet out something in Spanish, you can use the translate tweet function. So check that out as well. Well, see you all on Thursday. Thank you for joining me.